Welcome back to Politics Nation. The Sanford police chief has temporarily stepped down, but there are many questions about how his department handled this case. Those questions all start back on that rainy February night when self-appointed neighborhood watch leader George Zimmerman called 911. Today, the Griot's Joy Ann Reed retraced the steps that Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin took that night to see how this could have happened.
This is the clubhouse where Trayvon Martin stopped to get out of the rain on the night of February 26th. It's also here that George Zimmerman said he first spotted someone suspicious.
Hey, we've had some break-ins in my neighborhood, and there's a real suspicious guy. It's Retrieview Circle. The best address I can give you is 111 Retrieview Circle. This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. That's the clubhouse.
That's the clubhouse. Do you know what he's near the clubhouse right now?
Yeah, now he's coming towards me. He's got his hand in his waistband. Yeah, he's a black male. Something's wrong with him. Yeah, he's coming to check me out. He's got something in his hands. I don't know what his deal is. They always get away.
It would be at this point that George Zimmerman would have gotten out of his SUV. As you can see, if you look this way, there's nowhere else you can go in a vehicle. At this point, George Zimmerman would have had to pursue Trayvon Martin on foot.
He's running.
He's running? Which way is he running?
Down towards the other entrance of the neighborhood.
Okay. Which entrance is that he's heading towards?
The back entrance.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Trayvon Martin would have come from this direction, running or away from a pursuing George Zimmerman. He would have come around this swale, perhaps to try to elude him, and walk down this lane. If you walk down here, you'll see the place where Trayvon ultimately fell. His confrontation with George Zimmerman took place in front of this house.
911, do you need police, fire, medical?
Maybe both. I'm not sure. There's just someone screaming outside.
If someone's here arguing and your window's open right there, you can clearly hear, the arguing. It's one of these windows, I don't know which side, that they did actually hear the cries for help.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on, so they're sending.
So you think he's yelling help?
Yes.
All right, what is your phone number?
There's someone screaming. I just heard gunshots.
He ended up dying right up the sidewalk here.
Joining me now is Reverend R. B. Holmes, Jr. He's been asked to be vice chair of a special task force to review Florida's Stand Your Ground law. And Eugene O'Donnell, professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. He's a former New York City police officer and prosecutor. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you, Reverend Al.
Let me start with you, Eugene. What do those 911 tapes say to you about George Zimmerman?
Well, I think we're starting to see a picture that's pretty clearly indicating this is somebody who's not your average neighborhood watch person, that he took it upon himself to get into a vehicle, to surveil the neighborhood, to pursue somebody. What we're seeing in the video is the terrifying last minutes of the life of this child. And so we're seeing a very bad picture, which strongly suggests that ultimately, when this finally gets resolved, we're a month later, that there was no credible claim of self-defense.
Now, Reverend, you've been asked to co-chair a review of the law, but many argue that the law wouldn't cover Zimmerman anyway. Again, let me play this 911 tape, because there's nowhere on this 911 tape does Zimmerman even remotely act like he's being threatened or has to defend himself. In fact, he's saying the guy's running, he's running behind him. Listen to this.
They always get away.
Are you following him?
Yeah.
Okay, we don't need you to do that.
Okay.
So he's following him. You can hear him huffing, yeah. He's told we don't need to do that. He says okay, and he follows them anyway. So even despite whatever the panel you become co-chair of or have become co-chair of, whatever your finding is on the stand your ground law, clearly there's no stand your ground premise in this tape.
No, sir, Reverend. He is outside the law. Zimmerman is clearly the aggressor and the pursuer. If anybody should have stood their ground, should have been the young teenager, and he is on the ground, which is very unfortunate. We're going to have to take a real serious look at this law. We need to revisit it, and hopefully, once we've heard from the total community across the state of Florida, this law has a great chance of being repealed. Now, let me ask you. You were a former New York City detective and prosecutor. How do you hear this tape?
When you take all the tapes in the totality of what they say, they clearly evince his state of mind. And his state of mind is he is looking around the neighborhood, looking for somebody suspicious. He finds somebody suspicious. This is not
in his mind suspicious.
In his mind, and as we know from historically, he's found a lot of suspicious activity in the neighborhood. He's more than your average neighborhood watcher because he's an armed neighborhood watcher operating in a state that has this bizarre law. So he may have had some sense that he had more latitude than he should have. So obviously this law, the police and prosecutors in the state of Florida said this was going to happen. Chief Timoney in Miami said a trick-or-treater would get shot when this law was enacted. This was an open invitation. When you take the concealed carry law and the community watch and this law, you set a dangerous, you create a dangerous environment.
Reverend Holmes, the Orlando Sentinel reports police routinely make arrests on stand your ground cases. Does it disturb you, not as just one on the review committee, but as one that pastors citizens of Florida, that for some reason they acted out of the norm in this case?
Yeah, the law is very disturbing, Reverend, and I think that through your leadership and my members, Ben Crump and Darrell Parks and others, I think that the whole country, the whole world understand that this case is a classic case of racial profiling at its worst.
Yeah, and you have great members, by the way. That's the Lawyers for the Family.
Yes.
Let me say to ask you this, and putting on your prosecutor's hat. Full screen will show you the police report says this. This is not just the chief. Now, this is one of the policemen. At no point did I question Zimmerman about the incident that had taken place. Now, this is the policeman on the scene. This is what he said in his police report. Isn't that incredibly out of the normal? This is the guy on the scene, respond to a call. There's a dead young boy on the ground. He didn't ask any questions.
It's inexplicable because obviously not only do you want to ask questions, you want to hear what he's saying very carefully. You want to listen to this guy because even if he's not responsive, it's highly unlikely he would say nothing at all. So it's crucial in those seconds after this happens, the police pin him down for a story. It could be a story, whatever the story is, it's likely to be helpful if it's not a justifiable shooting.
But then, before you get through with that being incredible, when you get an answer sheet that was given by the chief, Bill Lee, he says this: when the Sanford Police Department arrived at the scene of the incident, Mr. Zimmerman provided a statement claiming he acted in self-defense. So the officer on the scene said never talked to him, never questioned him, yet the police chief says he gave a statement. I mean, a complete blatant contradiction.
As of today, nobody has come forward, and if the chief or anybody else in that department has possession of any statement that indicates there's a credible view of the evidence that he's justified, it would do us all a big favor if they came forward and told us what he said. As of this moment, I don't think anybody sees, any reasonable person sees any credible view of the evidence that suggests that he was not the aggressor, that he's not justified, and that an arrest based on probable cause should have been made then and there.
So would you say, from your view as a former prosecutor and detective, there's a problem in that police department in Sanford?
There's more problems than you can count, and I would say it goes beyond there because you also have the county state's attorney which apparently had played no role in this. I mean, if the police department were so befuddled and paralyzed by a relatively straightforward case, where was the Seminole State's attorney to come in, as happens all over the country, and say, here's the law? Obviously, there's a giant misperception of the law. If a case like this, where I don't think there's anybody can argue a credible view that there's a justification, this is essentially somebody being pursued and shot. What clarity do you need in a case like this?
Reverend Holmes, let me go to you to end this. Op-ed today by none other than State Representative Dennis Baxley, who sponsored the Stand Your Ground law that you're part of the review. He says it doesn't apply to the case. Let me give you a quote so you can respond to it. Baxley, the author of the Stand Your Ground law, said, quote, Mr. Zimmerman's unnecessary pursuit and confrontation of Trayvon Martin elevated the prospect of a violent episode and does not seem to be an act of self-defense as defined by the Castle Doctrine. He wrote the law, Reverend.
I agree strongly with the statement of the representative. Zimmerman does not have a moral, not legal ground to stand on. And I think that once all the evidence has been pieced together, he will be and should be arrested.
Reverend R.B. Holmes, and I want you, please, to come back and keep us posted. And certainly Eugene O'Donnell, thanks for your time tonight. Both of you have a great weekend.
God bless you, Reverend.
Bless you. Ahead, from coast to coast, Americans are rallying for justice, and rallies are breaking out all over the country. We'll tell you why this movement will not stop.